The story of World War II is often told through strategy, battles and machinery, but, the quieter side of the war, the home front, was a battlefield of its own. Ordinary civilians in Europe, Asia and even parts of the United States had to prepare their homes against air raids, sabotage, supply crises and, long periods without reliable services. What's often forgotten is how many of those civilian defence tactics were effective, low-tech and smart enough that they still hold value today for anyone interested in preparedness, homesteading or practical resilience. These weren't abstract ideas. They were survival habits developed by families who knew their safety depended on simple decisions made inside their own homes. That's why revisiting these tactics isn't nostalgia, it's strategy. And if you study them closely, you'll see that many of them translate perfectly into modern home defence and emergency readiness. This topic matters because wartime civilians didn't have the luxury of high-tech systems, reinforced steel doors or expensive security setups. They relied on knowledge and resourcefulness. That mindset is, still useful today. Whether someone wants better home security, disaster readiness, or just reliable ways to protect their family when, infrastructure fails. Once you understand how households operated under the pressures of bombing raids and blackout restrictions, the techniques immediately become practical modern tools. The first tactic that still works today is, honestly, controlling visibility. During World War II, blackout rules were strict because even a sliver of light could guide enemy aircraft. Homeowners responded by creating layered light control systems inside their houses. They didn't rely on a single solution. There were heavy curtains, inner blinds, and sometimes secondary barriers behind door frames to ensure no glow escaped outside. The modern application is simple. Controlling what's visible from outside increases safety during both normal times and emergencies. In practical terms, this means keeping interior layouts private, closing off lines of sight from windows and reinforcing front entry illumination control. In a power outage or crisis, this prevents drawing attention to your home. During normal conditions, it reduces burglary risk because valuables aren't visible from the street. A homeowner could use the same layered approach by placing blackout liners behind standard curtains and adding a second internal shade. It's inexpensive and effective, and it's exactly how wartime families protected themselves. The Second World War II tactic is hardening entry points with materials already available. During bombings, doors and windows were the weakest points of every home. Civilians learned to fortify them quickly using sandbags, heavy furniture, stacked timber and bracing planks. While sandbags might seem outdated, the principle remains. Reinforce the points where a home is vulnerable. Today, that translates into strengthening door frames with longer screws, installing internal braces on back doors, and adding simple reinforcement bars to windows in high-risk areas. Someone adapting the World War II method could cut 5 or 6 solid boards and store them in a closet. In an emergency, these boards can be screwed horizontally across the inside of a door in minutes. This is the same technique used by Londoners who converted their door frames into temporary blast barriers. It's fast, cheap, and, well, surprisingly strong. The third tactic is protecting water and heat sources. During the war, utilities often failed for days at a time. Households created backup water reserves using metal containers sealed with cloth and wax, and they protected heat sources against wind drafts and structural damage. You know, the transferable lesson here is to always maintain an independent water supply, and, well, a heat method that doesn't rely on the grid. These days, a modern homeowner can recreate this by storing clean water in small distributed containers instead of just one large tank. It's exactly what wartime families did to prevent a total loss if a container broke. When it came to heat, people used enclosed stoves, which were intentionally placed in the safest part of the home, you know, away from windows and exterior walls. In the modern world, a small rocket stove or, you know, an indoor safe emergency heater serves the same purpose. The principle is redundancy, not stockpiling. Make sure every essential resource has a backup that doesn't depend on modern infrastructure. The fourth tactic is building internal safe zones. Civilians didn't always have access to bomb shelters, so they created protected zones inside their homes. These zones were usually centered in interior rooms, with thick walls, low ceilings, and minimal windows. Families reinforced these areas using mattresses, bookshelves, and filled crates stacked against vulnerable walls. Today, this strategy is still practical for storms, intrusions, or long emergencies. Someone can designate one interior room as a fallback point, outfitting it with water-basic tools, a first aid kit, and reinforced internal walls. It becomes a layered defense. If the outer perimeter is compromised, you still have a controlled space to regroup. This is one of the most effective low-tech defense habits ever developed by ordinary civilians, and it requires almost no money to replicate. The fifth tactic is maintaining silence and controlled noise levels. This was especially important in occupied territories where sound could betray hidden rooms or stored supplies. Families learned to pad floors, use thick fabrics, and, you know, keep high-risk activities in internal rooms. Today, this applies to home defense because, well, managing noise makes your home less predictable. A quiet floor means you can move without broadcasting your position. Thick rugs and well-placed furniture reduce sound transfer and honestly increase privacy. Even simple changes like placing felt pads under furniture replicate the wartime principle of controlled movement. The final tactic worth carrying forward is, well, community-based vigilance. WWII neighborhoods survived because they watched out for each other. Families coordinated blackout compliance, shared tools, exchanged security tips, and alerted each other about suspicious activity long before phones were common. Modern home defense still benefits from this mindset. A trusted neighbor watching your property during travel or a small network that reports unusual behavior is often more effective than electronic monitoring. The war demonstrated clearly that, an organized bloc was much harder to target than an isolated household. These tactics endure because they were born out of necessity, refined under real pressure, and executed by ordinary people who, frankly, had no choice but to be smart, fast, and adaptable. You don't need a bunker to be secure. What you really need is layered visibility control, reinforced entry points, resource redundancy, internal safe zones, controlled noise, and, of course, a community mindset. Every single one of these can be applied today without any special equipment, honestly. If you want more historically grounded techniques that still deliver real results, make sure you subscribe to In the Beginning and share this guide with anyone who values practical history. There's a lot more worth bringing back.